Shalom, welcome back. Now we're going to be focusing on review of chapter 1 through 8. And we're going to go over all the stuff we've studied thus far. Every single review that I do is going to be what we covered within those chapters. Okay, so if you want to go over what you learned in chapter 1 through 8, this is going to be the video. What you went through chapters 9 through whatever, you're going to be going through that video. So here, we're going to be studying and going over all the stuff that we did. But we're just going over review-wise so you can just remember for your mind's sake what we've been doing. Now we're going to talk about nouns, okay? So nouns, we have to remember nouns can be identified as indefinite or definite. All nouns predominantly are indefinite. The only time they're not indefinite is when they're proper nouns, okay? And names, like the word Yonah, is a proper noun, okay? Word Ish, when we translate it, it means man, but literally it's a man because it's an indefinite noun, okay? When we go to make a noun go from the indefinite state to the definite state, we have one possibility here, which is the hey article. If I add the hey article to the noun, it becomes ha'ish, which means the man. So now I have a definite state. So the definite state now has been placed because of the dagesh put in front. We know that gutturals don't take the dagesh, so therefore that's going to change the vowelization to the kamatz instead of the patach. The other way by which we can change a noun, which is indefinite, to become definite is going to be our proper noun with the possessive ending. And we'll use the word e, the yud, which is for my, and we will attach it to the word ish. And here we get the word ishi. What does ishi mean? Well, ishi means my husband. But this is kind of a very special, endearing one, okay? There are actually two ways is for extra grammar for you to understand the word husband. The word husband in Hebrew is either Baal or Ish, okay? If you're going to use it in an endearing way, like you want to say my husband, my love, my man, that is going to be the word Ish. And so therefore, when you say my, you're going to say Ishi, my man, my love, my husband, okay? If you would use the word just my husband as in, yep, that's the guy that I'm married to, that is the word Baal. And the word Baal means literally owner. Because when a woman is married, she becomes the property of her husband because he purchased her through the purchase of a ring by which he gives her. Okay? And so she calls him Baali. Baali means my owner. That's basically what it means. And we can also translate it my husband, but that's what it means. And don't get weird on me and stuff with the word owner. It doesn't mean like you think, okay? You have to treat your wife like you would treat yourself, and if you really love yourself, you take good care of your wife. You take care of her, you love her, you treat her like she's the best thing in the world, okay? Because that's what's supposed to be. So the two forms of husband is like Baal, which has to do with one who's ruling over, or is the one that's over her in ruleship. And the word Ishi is dealing with the issue of love and endearment, okay? So the three forms that we have in biblical Hebrew that causes anything to become possessive is, so not possessive, but definite, is either going to be the definite article, the pronoun ending that's attached to the noun, or it's a proper noun. That's the only way we're going to find definite states in Hebrew. Also, we talked about that when we see the hey article added to a noun, where are we going to find these nouns typically? Well, they're either going to be the object of a preposition, or they're going to be the subject of a verb. That's where you're going to predominantly see these parts being brought forth. So either the object of a preposition, or the subject of a verb, or it can be the direct object that's going to be used in the sentence, okay? So think about this in these three formats, okay? Either A, it's the direct object, That's the definite direct object, because only definite direct objects have the et in front, and then the hey is going to come after it. And only that will happen when the noun needs the hey, because it needs to make it definite. If not, it'll be a proper noun. Okay. B, it'll be the subject of the verb, so it's going to be the one doing the action. Or C, it's going to be the object of the preposition. Those are your major three things you're going to find with regard to C and the hey article. Okay. The other thing we have to remember is understanding the differentiation between nouns. We said nouns, for example, have forms, okay? And the forms that we have to look for is going to indicate which one we are talking about. Is it plural, or is it masculine? Is it feminine, or is it masculine singular? Okay? For example, we have the word Seuss. Seuss is the masculine singular noun. Masculine singular. Im, when it's attached to the end of a masculine singular noun, is going to be the masculine plural form. Okay? Alt, actually let's go back here. Hey, when we add a hey to the end of a noun, this is going to make it the feminine singular. If we see the ot at the end, we know that this is the feminine plural. Okay? And remember the fact that when it comes to nouns, whether it's the feminine singular, we have to remember that there are two feminine singular forms. You can find one where the tav is placed at the end of a noun, or the hey is placed at the end of the noun. Okay? Very important to remember. And in relationship to proper nouns, we have to remember that proper nouns by themselves are definite on their own accord. Indefinite nouns don't have an indefinite article. They're by themselves and they're regarded as indefinite. Definite articles are only coming in two basic types. One is the absolute definite article, which is the hey, which is placed in the front of the noun. The second one is going to be just the pronoun ending. It's not an article, but it's an ending that we place always at the end. And we know that it creates the possessiveness because we're adding the pronoun to the actual noun itself. Another thing I want to talk about is remembering with regard to nouns that we have to remember the issue of noun sentences. Noun sentences, remember, are sentences that are created by two nouns without a verb of existence. Okay? So, known as a copula. Okay, copula are verbs, are the verbs of existence that we utilize in English. So if I said, for example, ish, or let's make this definite, ha'ish, and then we're going to put over here the noun Moshe. What am I saying? Ha'ish, I know, means the man. The copula, remember this is the verb that we don't have, which is the verb of existence, has to be used, so we put brackets so we can identify that this is something that is implied in the grammar but is not actually existing in the actual root language itself, is, and then lastly we have the word Moshe. So the man is Moshe. And we said about regarding this that this is how a noun sentence is always going to be formulated. We're having two nouns, one after the other, and we're going to have to place in the middle of it the verb of existence because the verb of existence doesn't exist in the language itself, it's assumed. Okay? The other thing we talked about is we talked also about the issue of taking demonstrative pronouns, such as the word they, which means this, and utilizing it in a sentence. So we said, for example, they Moshe. This, which is the same thing as a noun sentence, okay, because you're using a demonstrative pronoun. This, now you have to add the verb of existence. This is Moshe, okay? So just remember the fact that even with demonstrative pronouns, that ze Moshe is no different than the simple noun sentence that we talked about earlier. You just have to keep reminding yourself to place here in between the demonstrative pronoun the actual verb of existence is. Okay? And it could be are if it's plural. Just got to remember the sense between the two. Alright? The other thing I want to talk about is going over the issue of now verbs. Okay? With verbs, we talked about a bunch of different things. Okay? Verbs always have to have an agreement. Okay? So we have the subject, verb, agreement. Subject-verb agreement tells me that the noun that's attached to the verb always has to agree with whoever the subject is in the physical sentence. Okay? So if I have, for example, Vayelech, okay? I know that here, this is my third person, this is a masculine, and this is the singular form, that my subject somehow in the sentence has to agree. So this is going to be either a name of a man, or it's going to be a noun that is singular, that's masculine, okay? And that's how I'm going to identify this issue here. So I know if I have the word Yonah, that Yonah, because it's a name of a person and we know it's only an individual and it's masculine, agrees with the actual pronoun. So subject-verb agreement has to exist in most cases. When does it not have to exist? Okay? It doesn't have to exist when certain contextual elements are present. Okay? And these contextual elements are a very important part. And this is where much understanding is going to play in relationship to this here. So, like the word Vayomer. If we had Vayomer Yonah, Va Noach, let me get rid of this line here for a second so we can kind of see a little better. Vayomer Yonah Va Noach, okay, what does this going to be telling me? So we're going to learn a little bit more about this in importance here. That in Hebrew, the subject of the verb that is most prominent gets the front position. So that means Yonah is the first noun that's used. He gets the first prominent position. So even though we're going to read it as if it's and they said, but we're not going to translate it and they said. Okay? We're going to translate it in an English form that's very open to what we would normally see in English. As if we said, and Yonah and Noach, Noach said. Okay? That's how we're going to translate it. Yonah, however, and this is one thing that you can't express in grammar with English. You just can't do it. You would have to literally write almost like a paragraph of subjects to express what's going on here, because grammatically this is something that only Hebrew has, that it makes sense when you read it because you understand how the grammar is of it. Because Yonah is placed first, Yonah is the one who actually takes the prominence, as if he's the one who spoke first. He's the one who spoke up, and then Noach, who was in agreement with Yonah, he also spoke with Yonah. But Yonah takes first place, and that's why he's placed here. You can't see that here because this is English's normalcy, okay? It doesn't make sense in English, but in Hebrew it actually makes a complete sense of what's going on here. So how do you translate this? You can't translate it. It's something you have to understand is why English is horrible, because it doesn't have the ability to translate stuff really over, and why understanding the grammatics of this is so powerful because of how much it teaches you in relationship to this. So that's one thing. So, okay, so this is dealing with the issue of prominence. Okay, so we'll put here prominence. Okay, so prominence is what we find here is one issue. Another thing here is unity. Okay. Now sometimes prominence and unity can work hand in hand with each other. Okay. In unity, however, this is going to express kind of a different concept, where Yonah and Noah said together. And literally, you could translate this in that sense if you wanted to express the power of it. But at the same time, there's also other elements that you'll be missing, because now you just translated it. You've just narrowed yourself down as to what it means, okay? Because when we're looking at this, maybe it meant prominence. Maybe that was the issue I should have focused on. Maybe it meant unity. Maybe it meant both prominence and unity. And how do I differentiate between the two in translation? Well, you really can't. And that's the thing. But what you can do is you can at least understand the fact of what translators are doing when they're translating, is that they're picking between the point of which one should they hold as being prominent. Should it be this translation or should it be this translation? And that's what they're doing. So you could see when you're reading a translation in the Bible, if you're reading just an English translation, you're basically reading somebody's interpretation. You got to understand that, because they're having to interpret that part of saying, well, is it prominence or is it unity that they were focusing on, or did they neglect it at all completely? Who knows? It's the question you can only find by going back to the text and looking at it. If we're looking at unity, then the aspect of unity means that Noach and Yonah are being looked at as if it's one single being. Okay, they're one person. They're chad, as in their unity of function, and therefore you would have to express this in a way if you were wanting to try to do it. And Yonah and Noach in unity spoke you could say something like, and Yonah and Noach in unity spoke concerning the matter. But you got to see that, I am trying to act in the interpretation of unity, which is the grammatical aspect that's being used here, in order to express what's being said and how this is being done. So you can see the complexity that it can exist when trying to translate the aspect of unity, because people are going to say the excuses, well, the word unity doesn't exist in Hebrew, it doesn't say that in concerning, where are you getting all this stuff from? Well, this is where you're going to have to take them back and say, well, actually, in grammar, the concept of unity, when it's been implied in here, this is what it says in a grammatical state by which it's expressing that both Yonah and Noach were regarded as one single person. And it's a grammatical function by which you have to just understand the grammar of it, that this is what it's implying, that they in unity spoke concerning this thing. Okay? There's another form by which you can have, which is called disunity. Okay? And in disunity, this is the subject of what you would find. Okay? And let's see here. Okay. So here it'd be like Vayisar, and he's saying, No, Yona Vesera. Okay? Well, here, what is the disunity? Grammatically, this is telling me something is going on by which I am to understand who the prominent thing is supposed to be. What is that? So if I have, for example, a verb here that is supposed to be read in the masculine form, right? It's not plural, so I can't read it like I would in the plural form. In the plural form, I could read both men and women together, and that's accepted because of the grammatical state of what it is. However, when we're dealing with an issue of a masculine verb here, by which the subjects are divided into a boy and a girl, then we have an issue of disunity. And the disunity of this grammatical form is expressing the fact that we are to reject that this is to be done. Okay? That's an issue of disunity. That means a man is to sing, but not a man and a woman together. Okay? So that's what it be implying grammatically. And this is something that's actually found in the book of Devorah, not the book of Devorah, but the book of Shoftim, which talks about Devorah, where Devorah and Barak are singing, okay? And the grammatics of it does the same thing. It talks about her and him singing, but there is a grammatical dysfunction going on here. And what is that grammatical dysfunction? That's that disunity. That means to say, this is asur, that men and women sing together, but rather it is men should sing by themselves, and of course the women would be singing by themselves. And this is important to understand how grammar can impact so much of what it is we're reading and how we're looking at things. Okay. Another thing we're going to look at here is the issue of the verb and object. Because verb and objects don't have a beautiful picture at times, okay? Let's look at this one. So if I had, for example, I'm using the example here that's actually used in the book. So divro. So what is divro? Okay, it's literally diber plus the object. Alright? So here the O is my object in the sentence. Alright? And the object is somehow being attached to the verb. I want you to understand this. This is called incorrect, no whatsoever. Okay? Why is this done is a whole nother reason. And we're not going to get into that as to why it's done. But we need to understand that grammatically it's unacceptable and it's not correct. The correct form would be here, would be simply, if I was to put it like this, Diber oto. He spoke it. Okay? If you're going to have an object, by which it's just a noun, that's the object. Then you attach it to the direct object marker, and then it becomes like here, oto, okay? So divro is incorrect. This is the incorrect form. And this is the correct form. Why am I teaching you this is because none of the grammar books you're going to find actually tells you correctly about these issues. The grammar books normally try to make you think that there can be two forms, one with the et and one connected to the verb. But you need to understand grammatically this is not true. You cannot ever grammatically connect the object to a verb. Verbs only have attached to it the subject, never the object. So if you have an object that's connected to a verb, always tell yourself this is absolutely the incorrect form. This was written this way on purpose. I need to figure out why. Okay? When we're dealing with the issues of correct form, we always have to remember oto would be the correct form. Okay? So the verb with the object is going to be separated by using the object connected to the word et. Okay? And that's because it's the direct object marker, and the direct object marker is going to take the actual pronoun and attach it to itself, and this here is incorrect. The only type of verbs that are allowed to have any kind of object connected to it are infinitives. Infinitive verbs are the only ones. We're not going to get into it now, but that's just something to know in the future. So at least you can say, okay, there is something to, but this is the one that doesn't work. All right, so future verbs, present tense verbs, past tense verbs, no, you don't add objects to verbs. Verbs only have subjects, not objects. The infinitive form is the only one that's the exception to the rule. Okay, it's the only one whatsoever. And even that in itself, you just have to understand that when it's used in that way, it's going to be very different. Okay? So, when we're looking at the issue of verbs, we have to remember to identify the fact of what do we have? Do we have a vav conversive? Or do we have just a regular vav conjunction? Or do we have a vav reversive issue? The vav conversive always is going to be the vav with the petach and the dagesh in front. We have a future tense verb, and this element is going to be taking place. So here we have the vav conversive. Next we have what is the vav reversive. The vav reversive is going to only be when we have a past tense word, such as we use the word amarti. So here we have va amarti, and this is going to be the vav reversive. Okay? The vav reversive means I'm going to read the past as future. The vav conversive, let's write out the vav conversive here. I'm going to read the future as past. Okay? And then lastly, I'll just make this identify so that you know that's a yud. Okay? Lastly, we have just the vav conjunction. This, I'm not going to read it anything other than just a regular and. So if I see vayomar, I know this is future, and it's going to stay future. If I see this as Va'amarti. So okay, I'll write here stay, future. If I see va'amarti, I know this is going to stay in the past. So remember, vayomer and the vav conjunction is just the regular vav. So we just have a simple and. Okay? When we get to vav reversive, vav conversive, we have more of a complex and, right? Because it's going to change the element of the verb. Okay? So we have to remember the difference between the vav reversive and the vav conversive. The vav reversive changes the past, makes it future. The vav conversive makes the future into past. When is the vav conversive typically used? Well, here we go. This is normally known as the narrative. We're going to find this typically used as the narrative form. Okay? And it's no different than if I would have said, for example, Hu Amar. Okay? Vayomer would be simply just like saying Hu Amar in the past. Which is Va'amarti, and I will say would be no different than if I had said Vayomar. So I said Vayomar, that'd be the same thing as saying I will. Or not I will, but excuse me. I said he will. I need to write I will. Va'omar, I will say, okay? Va'amarti, I said, now becomes I will say. Va'omar is I will say. So these are the real forms by which they correspond to, okay? So don't get too overstressed out if you're struggling with the vowelization of Vayomer, okay? Or if you have any verb form that's in the Vav narrative form, okay, you can simply just write it in the past tense like this and know that this is no different, okay? But for the form by which you're going to find in the scriptures, you're going to see very commonly this is what we're going to see is the Vav conversive form, alright? And that's very important to remember that. With regard to verbs, we also need to remember how to find the root. Okay? So when we have a verb by which we're having a hard time, and we'll use like for the verb vayelech, when we have the word vayelech, okay, what is the process of the elimination? Remember we start going by nun, lamed, chaf sofit,